Hey everybody, so I wanted to do another video on evangelism, and just really kind of feel like the Lord wants me to share with you guys a little bit about how I came to do evangelism, and it might surprise you a little bit to know that I that evangelism is not something that has always come easy for me. It's not something that I've always just like wanted to do. As a matter of fact, when I was a new believer, okay, I started going to this church called the Bread of Life in Poughkeepsie, New York. And the church 20 years earlier had been formed out of a street ministry. So basically, there was a group of guys that started going out on the streets, and a bunch of people came to Christ, and so they decided, hey, why don't we start a church down here? And so the church was formed. It was like a grassroots church. They formed it out of the street ministry, all these people coming to Jesus. And so here I am, 20 years later, I come into this church, and all of the evangelism was pretty much kaput. Like there was, everybody had gotten older, and there just wasn't a whole lot of evangelism taking place. Well, conveniently, I start going to this church, and not too long after, the pastor makes this announcement. He said, I've been praying, and I really feel the Lord is really nudging me to start doing street ministry again. I feel like the Lord wants to bring us back to what we're formed from. And so he said, I think I'm gonna start doing evangelism. Is anybody interested in coming out on the streets with me? And so, everybody's raising their hand. Oh yeah, I'll do that. I'll do that. I'll do that. And so me, I want no part of that, but everybody else is raising their hands. So of course, not wanting to look unspiritual, I raise my hand. Oh, of course I want to do that. I'm like, yeah, right. And so, anyway, the following week we were going to talk a little bit about evangelism, and then the week after that was going to be go time, when we would actually go out and start doing our thing out on the streets. And so it comes the time when we're going to go out, and so he's like, okay, who's going out? And he's going around and he's asking different people, hey, how about you? You gonna go out on the streets? And they're like, no. You? How about you, Jim? Oh no, Charles, can't do it. How about you, Sally? Nope, sorry, Charles, I gotta leave early. How about you? And everybody that the dude asks, they say no to him. And conveniently, I am the last person for him to ask. And basically it comes down to this: if I say no to him, he's going out by himself. Okay, so there's like all this pressure on me. Every part of me is like, I do not want to go out on the streets. I don't want to walk up to people and tell them about Jesus. I don't know what I'm doing. No thanks. But he comes up to me and he says, Kevin, he says it with these big Tennessee brown eyes. Great big teddy bear guy. Big brown eyes. He looks down at me, and with his southern twang, he says, Kevin, you want to go out on the streets with me and tell people about Jesus? And I'm like, how dare you give me those eyes? Anyway, on the inside of me, there was a lion that roared, and the roar sounded something like this. No! But what squeaked out of my mouth was something completely different, and it sounded like this. Yes. So here I am, I committed. Not wanting any part of this, not thinking I could ever do this, okay? I did not want to do evangelism. I was afraid. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to do. And so Charles, he says to me as we're leaving, he says, don't worry, Kevin. I understand it's your first time out on the street, and you don't have to talk. You just listen to what I say, and if you start feeling a little comfortable, then you can go and talk to people, but just don't feel any pressure to talk to anyone, okay? And I'm like, okay, I can do that. Sounds good to me. So we're out on the street, and he's talking to some guy, and I'm standing on the curb acting like I'm catching a bus, acting like I'm not with him. And I'm listening to what he's saying, and everything's going okay. Everything's going smooth. Until all of a sudden, I hear the words, okay? And it's kind of like this. Like, you get like imagine like this, it's springtime now, it's April, and so the birds are beginning to lay their eggs, and all of a sudden what's going to happen is these little birds are going to hatch. Baby birds are going to hatch from their eggs, and they're going to be sitting in their little nests, and they're going to be happy as little clams as mommy bird goes out and gets worms and drops it in their mouths, and everything is great, and it's a peaceful existence, and they don't have to do any work, they don't have to do anything, and the days will go by, and the feathers will begin to develop, and their wings will begin to develop, and then one day mommy bird will come back into the nest and will look at the baby bird and say, well, it's time for you to fly. Kick the baby bird out of the nest. Well, this was my nest kicking out experience. My time in the nest didn't last very long, because Charles, he's talking to this kid, and all of a sudden he says, hey, Kevin, why don't you come on over here and take one of these here tracts and give it to this lady that's walking up the street? And I'm like, what about the deal, Charles? I thought I didn't have to talk. I thought I didn't have to say anything to anybody. Remember the deal? When you feel comfortable, then you can talk to people about Jesus. You can do it then, give me a little time to learn. No, he's like telling me, take this tract, give it to this lady. So, not wanting to look unspiritual, I'm like, I can do this. I walked over, I took the tract, and I mean, literally, my knees were knocking. I'm hating this. I am absolutely hating every second of this. This lady comes walking up the street. I'm terrified, okay? And what I meant to say to her was, excuse me, can I give you something to read about Jesus? But what came out of my mouth, it was like a different language came out of my mouth, because it sounded like this. I went, it sounded like Swahili or something. And this lady walks by, and she snatches the tract out of my hand, and she keeps going. And she's walking down the street, and she's reading this, and all of a sudden it hit me. It hit me so hard, like, oh my goodness, what I just did was eternal. Because I'm thinking to myself, okay, now this lady, she's either going to go to heaven or she's going to go to hell. If she goes to heaven, she's going to remember this night for all eternity, when God sent somebody across her path and gave her this pamphlet with the gospel message. She gives her life to Jesus. She'll be praising God forever for every laborer that God sent across her path. She'll remember this night 1,000,000 years from now. But then I also thought, and if she doesn't give her life to Jesus and she goes to hell, she'll remember this 1,000,000 years from now, as she thinks about every time the Lord sent somebody, a laborer, across her path to give her the gospel, reaching out to her. What takes place tonight would be added to her torment. But either way, it hit me. What I just did was eternal. What I just did will last for 1,000,000 years. And there's not a whole lot of things that we're going to do in this life. There's nothing in this life that's really eternal. You cut your neighbor's grass. Hey, it's a good deed. But guess what? 2 weeks later, the grass is going to grow again. It's going to be long again, high. And they're not going to remember 2 weeks ago when you cut the grass. What I'm saying is, when we do evangelism, it's eternal work. And that hit me so hard that what I just did will have an effect somehow or another on that woman's eternity. And it was at that moment that I fell in love with evangelism. And I started going out and doing evangelism. Like, that was the only time that my pastor went out on the street to do evangelism. I went out the next week, and 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 the next week. And I realized, where I thought there is no way that I could ever do this stuff. There is no way. I began to realize as I stepped out and as I was learning and I was learning how to talk to people and how to read people and learning different things about the ministry of evangelism that, oh my goodness, this is what I'm here for. I mean, this is the gift that God has given me. This is the gifting on my life. And I share this because there's a lot of people that may be watching this, or you may hear my stories, the things that I say, and you may be thinking, boy, that sounds really great, but I know that there's no way that I could do that. And you say that without ever trying. You don't know what you can do or what you can't do until you try to do something. So I want to encourage you to step out and don't just try it one time, try it a few times, okay? Because you might get out and you might think, boy, I really stink at that. But what have you ever gotten good at that you have not had to practice? Practice makes perfect, okay? You don't know what you can do until you step out to do it. So I just want to encourage you, take that step, do the scary thing, do the hard thing, so that God can show you what's actually in you. Okay? Hey, God bless you guys. I'll be making another video soon. Hope you guys have a great day. See ya. Love you guys. Bye.